Hello and welcome, everybody, to 7 ways to welcome abundance. So, firstly, thank you for being here. This is one of those weird topics in that it's one of the ones that most of us are really intrigued by and we love exploring, and it draws us because who doesn't want more? Who doesn't want more love, more joyous experiences, just more money for some and for many. And it's been one of the most fascinating things to me that for the 15 years that I have worked with people on their life transformations. So people have come to me for 15 years with areas of their life that they want to improve, or crises that they are going through that they want to come through and come out the other side of really strong. Or they're working on their soul and they're working on parts of their intuition that they want to bring into their life more. One of the things that I have seen time and time again, and I've experienced this myself, is this topic gets us really emotional. It gets under our skin. It triggers everything around safety, deserving. How can I have this when people over here have nothing or are struggling? It's such a melting pot and it's so emotional. And I'll be honest, I was not going to do a course on this. I'd been asked to do a course. I started one a couple of years ago and then I abandoned it. People had said to me, teach a course on abundance. And this broadcast that you're watching is to celebrate the fact that in 2 days we launch Abundance Upshift, which is a series of videos which we will be releasing over 14 days and then people have access to forever. A video and audio toolkit that really helps you look at abundance, understand abundance in a new way, and elevate it in your life. And one of the reasons that I came to do this course instead of a course I was planning to do right now is this book, which I released at the end of March. It's called Energy Speaks. And I started doing interviews for the book that my publisher had organized as early as February, because people want these interviews in advance. And there are 3 chapters in here that relate to abundance. There's abundance. There is a chapter called The Art of Receiving, and there is a chapter called Loving Money. And every interview show I did, people just went straight to these chapters. And at the same time, I had people in my life talking to me about abundance issues. So it seems like it's up for everybody at the moment, which is why I did the course and why I wanted to do tonight's broadcast, 7 ways to welcome abundance. So firstly, before we get started on any of the 7 that I'm going to share with you tonight, this is a really complex topic because it is entirely unique. What one person sees as abundance, somebody else couldn't care less about. And that's really important to know in our comparison-based society. I think that one of the downsides of our social media is it has roared this comparison world that we can live in really into focus. So people see other people's lives and they're like, wow, they're really abundant because they're on a private jet. Oh, wow, that will make me feel amazing. It might not. Oh, wow, they've got like this amazing boyfriend and I always see photos of them on the beach and I wish I had that. They're happier than me. And that's not necessarily true either, because when we compare to someone else's life, we don't know all the circumstances they're living in. And we don't really know how we'll feel when we get there. Success depression is a thing. When people get very rich, when they achieve their dreams, they go through a depression phase because it's like, oh God, what now? I was aiming for this thing and now I've got here, and now what's going to motivate me? So part of us does enjoy the struggle. Part of us does enjoy the push-pull. And I'm not saying we enjoy horror or extreme hardship or punishing situations or punishing experiences. That's something else. But for all of us, when we become abundant, when we become more abundant, we will then start to look for the next thing. And it doesn't mean we'll never be satisfied with the stuff that we've got. You know, perhaps you'll reach a level of material and financial abundance that for you is perfect. And then you'll go, oh, this is great. Well, I now know what it feels like to earn 6 figures a year. And that's great. That's giving me a lifestyle. That's what I wanted. Cool. I feel pretty good here. But now I've got that taken care of. Now, what do I want to do with the energy that I used to have to put into trying to make the bills work and figuring out where that money was going to come from? Now that money's here, that energy wants to transform and go somewhere else. So this is why a lot of people, when money is taken off the table, a lot of people who are in their heart and who want a soul-led life, they turn to more philanthropic acts. They turn to giving their time and or their resources to areas of the world, people in the world that need help, because that way they can be purposeful with their resources. So one way to welcome abundance, this is the first of the 7, is to be realistic about the steps you want to take. So be realistic about what's achievable this week. Let me boil that down for you. Let's say your big abundance dream right now is, okay, I want to have £1 million or $1 million or €1 million so that I can help my mother out and really take the pressure off her. And, you know, I could see that my family were okay. And I could also kind of let go of this job that I don't want to do because I want to write this book. And I'm not getting any time because between the family and between the job and between my mother, I'm exhausted. So the money's going to solve all of that for me. That may or may not be true. I mean, the money will certainly help, don't get me wrong. But there are a couple of things to look at in that. The first thing that comes up for me is the level of stress that you're running, because of all the masters that you're serving. So you're worried about your mother and tapping into how she's feeling and all of her struggles, and then you're trying to take care of your family over here. Then you're doing a job that you really don't want to do, but because it's feeding these other things, you're doing it anyway, and then you're neglecting the part of you that has something you want to express, has something you want to bring out, which is the book. So the very first thing to do is to look at you and go, okay, what can I achieve this week that will make me feel more abundant? And the first step might be, I just need an hour to myself this week. I just need an hour where none of them can reach me, where I can just come back to me and just breathe a little bit. And you might go, Lee, it's a way bigger problem than that. No, I've got to make all this happen. Well, trust me, if your energy is going like that when you're trying to make the big goal happen, you have to realize, oh, hang on a second, I can't build this in a week, and I can't build this from this state. So take an hour to sit down and reverse engineer your goal. You know, maybe your goal isn't very achievable right now because you haven't put steps in place as to how you're going to manifest this money that's going to solve all of these issues. But equally, you don't know how much you are alleviating your mother's suffering just by being present with her in her life. And this kind of leads me to a little bit of a segue. We have to be careful when manifesting around wanting to take other people's money or abundance issues away, because that can sometimes cloud what we're able to bring to ourselves. So, for example, if your mother is very against having her experience transform, which some people are at certain stages of our life, there are certain situations that we get in as a soul that are really there for our growth. Even if from the outside it looks hard, there's something that we're aligning with that's maintaining that there. So if you place all your focus on her rather than yourself, if you go, okay, I'm going to do this for my mother, that's going to run you into some trouble, because then you're not dealing with your abundance energy, you're dealing with your mother's abundance energy. So this is quite an important segue. Maybe this is number 2, but let's just re-clarify that. When trying to manifest abundance for yourself, it is better to manifest it for you and trust and know that you will then be generous and benevolent to the people in your life that you love and you want to give to, versus thinking of those people when you're trying to manifest money. Okay, I really want to bring $1 million to myself because then my mom can get that much of that money. Because you put your mom in there, if she doesn't belong there, if she doesn't want $100,000 or whatever you're going to give her, she's going to interfere with that. So just leave her off to the side and know that you're manifesting for yourself, and that you, as the architect of what you bring to you, if it's money, will then be able to give it to her. So just to backtrack, small achievable steps. You might have one big goal that might be so acute in your body because it's going to save you from all these hard, awful, stressful feelings. So the first thing we have to do is go, how do we let you have less stress and take less responsibility? Because that's not an abundant state that you're in right now. That's a slavery state to everybody else and everybody else's needs. And truth be told, you could be dead in a week and you wouldn't have manifested that million. So let's focus, because any of us can die any day, right? And I always try and remember that whenever I get too far into the future. And it's helped me 1,000 times to come back to, I have today, and today is guaranteed. I'm seeing the world, so I'm alive. I try not to future project a year or 2 or 3 out in any way that is to try and help me escape today. So what could you do this week that's going to make you feel abundant? What could you do today that's going to give you that feeling of abundance? If you can't make big outer changes happen overnight, you might even just go and sit with a journal and jot down some ideas about how you could make it happen over a 1 or 2 year phase. So that's number 1. Small achievable steps with your abundance plan. Number 2, okay, know who you are and what you value. This is very important. It may sound obvious. Oh, I get it, but here's what I mean by this. I remember working with, I had a client who was, at the time, this was several years ago, I had a client who had her own business and she was really determined to make it a success. And she worked with me in one-on-one sessions over a couple of years. And she tripled her income. She was determined that's what she was doing. She hired me and was doing countless other things to really support her vision of abundance. And she was determined she was going to make a lot of money, like high 7 figures. And that's what she did. And when she hit that point, she didn't know what to do because she thought she should understand who to be when she became this multi-7-figure CEO of a business. And she didn't really want it. She'd landed in a dream that she had thought she wanted, that she had thought she would value, that she thought she would know how to be, and she didn't. And actually, it was interesting because she went through the crisis for about 6 months, and then she got to a point where she scaled everything down. She didn't want the responsibility, she didn't want the pressure, and she didn't like the way that people responded to her when she got a lot of money. Because, a lot of money, a lot of status, a lot of success, it can change people around you too, which is often why we're afraid to have more. We're worried about what the neighbors will think or how our sister will treat us. So she actually scaled it back. So I remember one of the things that we worked on was what she really valued. And one of the things she really valued, and this was from the session number 1, was peace. And she had created a life in which there was no room for her to have peace because she was so in demand. And that was the nature of her job. It wasn't the kind of thing where she could just disappear for a few months. It was all built around her. So because she'd lost that value, she started to feel suffocated, deflated, and like she was living in a dream that she didn't belong in. So this is why I say, know who you are and know what you value. And of course, that changes for us as we go through life. As every stage of life and every experience that we have, we're going to keep changing. That's why we always have to find new ways to balance as we go through life. It's like, man, this planet, it's not a rest. It certainly, it keeps us on our toes, but then that's part of being human. So know who you are and what you value, and incorporate that into your abundance stream. So point number 3, ways to welcome abundance, is, let me find it here. I wrote out this big list earlier and I decided I was just going to randomly pick 7 based on what came up, is to understand your why when manifesting. So I'm going to cross over these 2 points here. Understanding your why when manifesting is very powerful because, my client, for example, she had just got it in her head that multi-million-dollar company and multi-million-dollar life was going to solve certain problems for her. And it was great. She manifested it. Years later now, she's really happy. She's proud of herself for doing it. But she went through such a shock when she got there because she realized she had created a life she thought she wanted based on what she'd seen and heard. And she'd realized she'd been giving all her energy and all her power away. And she then had to break it down. So you can save yourself the time by anything that you want to manifest today. Ask yourself why. So let's try it. Think of something that you're thinking about, and just bring it to your mind or write it down on a piece of paper. What would you like to manifest? And the question I have for you is, do you know why? And if the answer to your why, if you have an answer as to why, and you're satisfied by that answer, great, full steam ahead. But if your why is so that I don't have to feel like a failure, or so that I don't have to live in the shadow of money like my dad did, you want to look at that, because you can figure that out now. You can do some healing work around whatever it was that your dad's trigger around money was, that you're worried that you've inherited or that you still feel traumatized by. So number 2 was know who you are and what you value. And number 3 links to that. It's know the why of what you're manifesting, because that way it will come to you quicker. I'll give you a quick example from my own life that just comes to me. I was desperate to go into music in my early 20s. I'd walked away from a career in theater, and I just was consumed with songwriting. And I was trying to break down the doors of the record industry, and I made an album, and nothing was really igniting the way I wanted it to. And at the same time, I found this work, and it's because I went to a workshop, and the guy running the workshop, Chuck Spezzano, great guy. The workshop was called Psychology of Vision, and there were 300 of us in a room in London. And he said to all of us in the room, he said, if you were willing to surrender your plans to God, because God has a better idea of your best life plan than you do, come to the front. And, I remember it so clearly. About 100 people who had done this work a million times and they loved Chuck. They were all like, ah! They all ran to the front and they all looked so happy. And then there were about 100 other people who kind of were sat behind me that kind of went, no, I know what my plan is. Thanks, Chuck. I'm fine. I'm sitting right here. I've got it worked out. And then there were those of us somewhere in the middle. I totally got these guys, because I was like, I want to be in the music industry and this is what I want to do. But I loved how the people at the front looked. I was like, God, they look so happy. They look so free. It's like, wow, surrender looks good. And this arm folding stuff doesn't look good. Now, hilariously for me, when I started doing this work, I was doing private readings for people. I didn't think anyone would come. I did it because a friend talked me into it, and she had a newsletter. She was a yoga teacher. And 15 years later, it has given me everything that I hoped the music industry would give me. But it's not the form that I was fixated on. So while I was fixated on this thing that wasn't working, that was failing for me, over on the right, this other thing started to happen that I loved self-growth and metaphysics, but I never thought it would be my job. I just loved going to workshops and having readings, you know, and playing that with people. So it's very interesting how the form that we're trying to manifest, there's something in it for all of us. There is something underneath that experience. In my case, it was I wanted to use my voice to create things that help people the way that music had saved my life. As a tormented teenager, music was like one of the things that saved my life. And so I was like, I love music. I love writing music. I want to create things that do that for people and go around the world and deliver them. And, you know, 15 years later, I've done that just under a different career. And then interestingly, music has kind of come in on that too. So, but I had to let go of the details and focus on the why. Now, if I'd been able to figure that out myself almost 20 years ago, I'd have done it myself. So think about the things that you're trying to manifest, the places, the things, the people, and ask yourself, what is this going to give me? So reverse engineer your manifesting a little bit and get under the hood and get into your thoughts and your feelings, because they are there to give you an experience. Abundance is a growth path. Abundance is no different to self-growth. It's constantly a growth path and one of learning. So if you can figure out what you're trying to manifest and what it's going to heal or give you, you have that awareness, and suddenly you're operating at a whole other level of manifestation. You're suddenly a lot freer, and you're not trying to control the form. I always say, if you need a new laptop, don't start saying, I need $2,000 for the latest Mac. Just say, I need a new laptop and I'd love it to be a Mac. You never know. Someone might give you one. Someone might sell one for $300. So don't get too fixated on you having to control all the details, but know the essence of what it is that you're trying to bring yourself. Or if it is a very specific thing, be willing to be open as to how it might come to you in your life. Okay, back to the 7 ways to welcome abundance lottery. I actually have 13 written up here, and we're just skimming the surface here, but I wanted to give you guys a bit of a primer. So, perfect. Number 4, examine what you learned about money, history, and now. So number 4 is examine what you learned about money, history, and now. So 2 tasks in this one. What was your childhood experience around money? You know, what were the things that you heard? I like to share that one of the things I heard, which I'm sure many of you did too, is my dad, God bless him, who's trying to provide for a family of 5. It'd be like, don't turn the heating on. Don't, you know, kind of like turn those lights off. That's going to cost us, you know. And I think so many of us have that story, you know, and whether it was our dad or our mom, of course, all they were trying to do was make everything work and do the best they could. But sometimes fears that they had, which may have been really true for them, as in who they were and the situation they were in, we just take them on as a pattern, whether they're a reality for us or not. And we do this in a very unexamined way. So it's really good to examine, what was I exposed to as a kid around money? What were the things that I was taught? And also the good things, because it's important to look back and see what your parents gave you that was a great attitude around money too. I mean, I'm really grateful to my parents for all of the different things they taught me. And some of them were things that I took and ran with, and some of them were things that I had to go, oh no, that's not quite for me. I can see why that was true for my dad, or is true for his character, but I have to let that go now, and I have to birth my own. But I could only do that because I spent a lot of time examining it. You know, I went to workshops. I thought about abundance a lot. It was something in my 20s that I really had to think about, because I knew that the limits I was feeling financially didn't feel congruent with my dreams. And my dreams were, I wanted to travel. I didn't want to do jobs that didn't feel true for me. I wanted to create, and I wanted to have the freedom and the finance to do that. And, you know, I'm very grateful today. I mean, you know, it's better than I could have hoped, but I didn't arrive there because I foresaw this goal. It's just that I spent a long time examining underneath what's my programming and what's my beliefs, and which are the ones that I need to move and adjust and let go of as I move forward and create new ones. So that leads us to the now. So I said, examine your beliefs about money, historical and the now. What do you hear about money right now today? So I'm recording this in 2019. Who knows? You might be watching this in years to come. Think of, 2 or 3 people in your life who you're close to. What do you hear them say about money? The good and the tricky. So the good might be, you've got one friend who's always like, oh, spend the money will come. And that's one of the learnings that you've taken. And that's why you love this friend, because she's right. Actually, I mean, within reason, if you're, mortgaging your house to do something, maybe that's different for you if that's going to bankrupt you. But if she's the friend that always reminds you that spending an extra $5 or $10 on something isn't actually going to kill your circumstances, and you need her as a cheerleader for that, because that goes against what your parents' belief was and that you inherited, she's great. She's one of your money mentors, or her way of being there is a money mentor. But perhaps she or someone else has a fear of money too. Perhaps you've heard them say, oh, I'd hate to be rich because then all my family would just come after me for money. And you heard it one day and something in your body responded and you're like, oh yeah, your body's telling you something. Your body doesn't respond unless your body goes, oh yeah, that's the truth for me too. Yeah, I'd better not get more money because then all my family are going to come after me. Well, that's only a problem if you don't know your boundaries or you don't know how to say no to your family. And this is where I believe one of the gifts of abundance is. We often have this fantasy idea that abundance is going to come and solve all our problems. And maybe it does if finance is a real struggle for you, but it also gives you chances to grow, gives you chances to grow around those shadow sides. I've learned this many times for the people that I've worked with and been friends with over the last decade, especially some people who have really enormous wealth in their life. Some of the lessons that I have seen them go through, worked with them on, and been privy to in friendship in all these different relationships I'm talking about. It's fascinating how so many of them have got really good at their boundaries and their no, even as very generous people, because other people's money entanglements come after them. They kind of see them as a bank that should just be giving out all the time. So that's a positive as well with abundance. It's not that your family asking you for money is going to be a problem if you don't want to give it to them. It's more you not being able to know how to say no right now. Well, you can learn the empowerment of knowing how much you're going to give them and when there's a line and when you decide that line can't be crossed. So becoming abundant within your family might be part of the empowerment journey you need to take in order to shift the relationship. We don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens in your life. So identifying what's going on around you and what people are saying about money right now that activates you in your body, and looking back and going, how many of those beliefs am I still unconsciously running? Okay. Number 5, this is one of my favorites, and some of you will know this very well. Be grateful. Be grateful, be grateful, be grateful. So when I started doing a gratitude list a few years ago, I'd done it on and off at times through the years, but I kept one consistently for about 8 months, 3 years ago, and it changed my life. I still do it occasionally, but honestly, that 8 months was a bit like a muscle training to shift my awareness. I would put down the simplest things. I would put down things like the roof over my head, the fact that I had food today. I'm highly aware of the differences that we're all living in the world right now. So when you really focus on practicing gratitude, it brings you back to you and your center. And after a stressful day, or a day where you've given your energy out to other people, or perhaps you felt like, I haven't got my own energy, everybody's taking from me, if that's your story, sitting and just giving yourself the conscious 5 minutes to get conscious about what changed you today, it starts to develop a slowdown in you that you are able to access quicker most days after you've practiced writing gratitude. So you start to notice it. You know, I remember very distinctly, there was a shift for me a couple of months in with gratitude, which sounds crazy, but I remember thinking it was a bit crazy, but it showed me the power of this exercise. I was on tour at the time and doing lots of speaking events across North America. And I remember a couple of months in, distinctly on one day when I was meeting some people after this live event I'd done, I remember telling a woman, I said, "You're going on my gratitude list tonight." She was so lovely, just a person I met who'd followed my work for a few years, and we just had a few minutes at the end of an event at a meet and greet. And she was wonderful, and she lit my heart up, and she was just a very special person and touched me, as people do all the time, right? You know, someone does that to us in the grocery store, or didn't have to be at an event. But as I said it to her out loud, I realized something had changed in my brain, because I was no longer doing what I did the first few weeks I wrote gratitude, which was I was sitting there going, oh yeah, I was grateful for that. Oh yeah, 4 hours ago. No, it brought me into the now. I suddenly knew what I was grateful for in the moment, because I knew who I was, and I was practicing what I valued, which goes back to what I said earlier. I think it was point number 2. Know who you are and what you value. I have friends who won't go and buy a coffee at a coffee shop because they say, I'm not spending $5 or $6 on a coffee when I could just make it at home. I love spending $5 or $6 on a coffee because, you know, for me, yes, I love almond milk or oat milk latte. That's part of it. But it's also the experience of the person who I chat to, who serves me. And it's like a ceremony for me. So I really value that. And it's something I'm grateful for in my day. If I can just go and sit and have a coffee for 10 minutes by myself and just watch the world go by, have a moment to breathe, take it all in. So your gratitude list is rocket fuel for manifesting abundance. I can't sell that enough. And I'd always heard about it, but it changes your brain. It changes your wiring. And the other thing I'll say to any of you who had resistance like I did to kind of, I don't want to have to do this every night. You don't have to care. I remember some nights I would be going into bed so tired, especially if it had been like an event evening. But I wrote it anyway, and I didn't have to feel good about what I was writing. I just had to get in the habit of noticing. And over some time, it changed everything for me. So be grateful. Okay, we have 2 more. We are going to pick this one. Oh, this one is good. Okay, this one is good because it's juicy and it's hard and it's annoying as hell, but it works. So, face your fears. How many of you, I would get a show of hands if we were live in the room right now, but how many of you hate looking at your bank account, dread the day that your tax comes in if you're self-employed? I've been self-employed for 20 odd years, so you know I've had that relationship. I know many of you work for businesses, so that won't be such a factor, but the day the accountant gives you the final tax bill, the day you're dreading the day that your spouse or your child or the person that you live with or a dependent comes to you and says, oh, the hospital need me to pay this. How many of you have like that's the thing I just hate? If you can lean into that more, you're going to change the energy of it. So one thing I always advise to people, because this is something I had to do very much. If you are afraid of looking at your bank account, looking at opening the bills when they come, adding up what your debts are, I'm telling you, do it. I don't care what you have to do, you know, make your favorite drink, put your favorite piece of music on, like psych yourself up, create like a whole environment in your house for 2 minutes before you're going to open that envelope that you don't want to open. I hate doing this thing. This is the worst thing. Start to show yourself you can do it. Doesn't mean you're going to love it. doesn't mean you're going to celebrate it. Now, some of you might shock yourselves that you'll start feeling that. The more you force yourself to do this thing that you normally avoid, you'll be like, oh, what was the problem? But the things that we avoid, we hold energy back from manifestation. So if I can explain that a little more clearly, all of us have our fears. You know, we're all very unique. We all have our strengths, our weaknesses. All of us have our fears, and that's okay. That's who we are as humans, right? But when we tend to decide that the fear is that cupboard that we are not going to look at, and that cupboard sits in our house for 9 years, we have 9 years of unused space and unused energy in our life. That if we had just been able to go into that cupboard, even though we know we don't like the job and we don't really want to do it, so we put Donna Summer on the radio, and we get our favorite drink, or put some incense on, or whatever it is. Put a summer outfit on. Whatever you need to do to know that I'm going to go into dread about this thing. So what can I do to walk into this thing with a bit more support in a different way? Facing our fears brings so much power into our life, and we all have them. We all have our fears. It's part of life, but fear is necessary for growth. We don't grow through anything without challenging ourselves. So here's the way I deal with fear. If I'm terrified of something, then I don't have to force myself to do it. And like many of you, I've had times in my life where I had trauma that I was dealing with, really some really tough stuff happened to me at periods in my life. And I was, fetal position for a year and couldn't face things. So yeah, in those situations, no, it wasn't so much about facing my fears. It was about getting myself back to balance. It was about self-care and love, and kind of like, can I just support myself to feel like I want to exist? Let's do that first. Goes back to point number one. What's achievable this week? Not the big end dream that you're beating yourself up about that you want to get to. What's achievable support this week? So facing our fears, when we start to practice that, when we start to open the bill, look at the thing that scares us about money, go on the dating website. And we're so traumatized and angry about having to go on a dating website. We want to meet someone, but we don't. You're not going on the dating website to try and meet the person of your dreams. You're going on the dating website because you've identified something about the dating website terrifies you or triggers you. That's very different to trying dating websites and going, you know what, I've tried it for 3 months and it was kind of entertaining and it was really annoying and I'm done. I'm peacefully walking away. That's different. That's a different kind of energy to, oh, I don't want to have to go on a dating website. That's different. This is what we want to look at. It's like, oh, what's that energy? That's very interesting. Let's just explore that. Let's examine that. It might be that we need to talk that through with someone. It might be that going on the dating website ourselves is going to be the thing that moves the energy. God help whoever you message or whoever messages you. But that can be part of the fun, right? I always used to say to people with dating websites, just use them as relationship therapy. Don't take it too seriously. And use it as a way to play relationship therapy. And then when you're done with it, just walk away. You're done, but try it. What's the worst that can happen? We so often don't take an approach of what's the worst that can happen. And I really believe, a lot of people will say, what's my purpose in life? The longer I've lived, and I'm still reasonably young, I guess, I'm 43, but I've had some serious ups and downs in my life. And the one thing I've noticed is a sense of purpose is always backed up by growth. We don't tend to feel purposeful when we just kind of hang out for a year. If you're somebody who's like, I need purpose, it's because you need to grow. And growing definitely takes being uncomfortable about certain things, but creating a system and a support structure for ourselves that we can just gently walk into that a little bit every now and then. And we just keep going back in. So if it's looking at your bills or your debts and you're like, oh, godly, I just can't look at them. Write down Friday, 10 a.m. or whatever time suits your schedule. Every Friday at 10 a.m., I'm going to take 10 minutes to look at my debts. I'm just going to look at them, I'm going to think about them, I'm going to see how I feel, and then I don't have to do it again. But that's my commitment. Once a week, I'm going to just give this 10 minutes of my time. You'll be surprised how much energy it moves. And you'll know whether this is resonant for you right now, because you'll want to punch my face in through the screen. You'll be like, which is okay, by the way, because, you can't really punch the screen in or it won't reach my face. So don't worry if you're feeling angry. But it's not about what I'm saying. It's about what your reaction is. And that's the truth for any of us. When we have a reaction to something, there's something going on in there. And it could be very historical. It could be something that's recent. And it's trying to tell us something. Our body is trying to tell us something, and we have to examine it. So, okay, that leads us to, I think, number 6. This one's a short one. Be willing to change. I've said a few different things so far. Abundance is a growth journey, and it's going to change us. And it's funny because we often want to organize change. We're like, well, I'd like all of this part of my life to stay exactly the same, but I'd like to bring in £1 million over here so that I can do X, Y, and Z. And it won't happen like that. You'll bring in the £1 million and you'll be like, great, I brought in the £1 million. Oh, that friendship isn't quite working the same way it was. And oh, that's interesting. I've just been fired from that place. Well, fine, I've got £1 million now, but I didn't think I was going to be fired. Things change. When we change, things change. So when we talk about you welcoming abundance in your life, how welcome is change? And that's really the question to ask yourself, because to become more abundant in your values, your experience of life, your money, your resources, and all of those things tend to go together. You might get the money and the resources first, and then you're like, oh God, well, I'm still not quite happy. So now I've got a bit more time or resources. Maybe I should try and figure out my balance and my true north, and maybe I want to learn how to be more generous to the rest of the world, but I might need to do some therapy or something to get there. So are you willing for change is the question. And I think we're all changing all the time, right? You can't be on this planet, see the planet changing, see people changing, go through the years that we live, have our bodies change and not change. But there's another level of change that happens when you are consciously focusing on manifesting and creating it. You're working a little more with universal energy. And you're saying, hey, universal energy, I see you. I see you. You see me? Yeah, let's cook up some magic together. Which is a little bit different to when we do the, oh yeah, hi, oh yeah, oh, cool, yeah, which is kind of like the asleep zone that most of us are trained into. When we start to wake up the magic a little bit, doesn't always mean it feels good. Oh boy, no. When you wake up, as many of you know, it can push you through your stuff big time. But when you turn your light on and the universe sees your light, and you turn your light on regularly, as much as you're able to kind of go, hey, I want to manifest this bigger thing, you're going to change, and you have to be okay with that. And for those of you who are sensitive and emotional, like, I'm the kind of person that I feel stuff as I'm going through it. I know I envy other, I've got a few friends and they'll manifest stuff physically. Like they'll go, oh, my knee's really hurting. It must be because I'm trying to move in a new direction. Thus far, I have not been a physical manifester, really. I've been more of an emotional, energetic manifester. So that's always the thing that I'm like, oh God, what am I going through now? But I've kind of got used to it. It's like, oh, I'm going through something because I'm changing and I'm intending. And I have tools and resources to figure that out. But we have to agree to say yes. We have to say, yeah, I'm ready for change. Yeah, God, use me. If you have a plan that's bigger than mine, okay, I'm willing to surrender. And you may not use the term God. God wasn't really my alignment when I agreed to do that with God at the time, but I have no judgment over higher power names or who they are, or to me, higher powers, universal power. It's really, for me, it's beyond the self, beyond the human ego. And that world is so rich. So last but not least, okay. Well, this is I'm going to squeeze two in together. Give more. Give more to people, give more to things. So giving to yourself, we've covered, and that's really important. But sometimes, especially if you aren't feeling abundant, you can create an abundant experience by asking, who needs me today? And you might say, what, even when I feel like crap, Lee, how can I say, yeah, oh yeah, that is the most important day, to go beyond our own self and say, who needs me today? Now, again, caveat, not if you're traumatized, not if you're recovering from grief, not if you're physically challenged, not if you're going through illness. I just mean if you're feeling a bit down, if you're feeling a bit melancholic, if you're feeling, and I'm not talking super clinical depression here, I'm just talking, you feel like you can't get your mojo working, or you feel a bit resistant. A great way is to blast through that, is to give and to go, who needs me today? And it doesn't have to be like a phone call or a visit. It could just be, I'm going to smile at someone that I see on the street, and I'm going to see how that goes. I'm going to choose someone on the street who looks like they could use a smile. And I'm so shy, I'm not even going to tell them I'm smiling. I'm going to smile at them when they're not looking at me. That's okay too. That's energy. That's positive energy sent their way. You know, you can feel energy. I mean, I'll give you an example. This is me smiling at you. And this is me looking daggers at you. Two different energies, right? I didn't hold the daggers for too long, but two different energies. And the energy is, it permeates. So smile at someone when they're not looking if you feel super shy, but ask yourself, who needs me today? What can I do? What action? What phone call? What message? Who can I show up for? Maybe it's just I'll write a little message to a friend and pop it in the mail, because I don't feel like I want to interact with people, but maybe I'll just a message of gratitude. Give. It's important to give. That is such an abundant state to be in. So especially for those of you who feel a little, you know, I've met this in a few people over the years. They've said, Lee, I feel kind of stingy. I feel like it's hard for me to give because I don't really trust people, and I'm not sure they want to take from me. And I've always said, okay, we can dig into that, and we can look at where that came from. It's going to be really important to examine that, but the action is going to be to go against your programming. The action is going to be to give for you. And whenever you can, and whenever you feel like you can, give a compliment, give some money, give somebody lunch, even though part of you knows that you want to hold checks and balances. Well, how do I know they're going to give it me back? You don't, because the universe is like a bank, and we will give and receive. You'll give to one person, you'll receive from another. It's not about checks and balances. And if you play that game, you're really limiting abundance. Well, I gave her £20, so she should give me £20. No, she shouldn't. You gave her £20. Just hand the money on. The money will come from somewhere else. That may not be an attitude you can access today, but that was the second part of this. I'm kind of squashing two together. Trust in more when you are worrying. So when you are worrying about money, you know, the mind's going, oh God, I'm not going to make the rent. Da, 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 da. Have another thought, which is, I trust there will be enough. I trust this will work itself out. Even if you're like, Lee, I don't trust that at all. Doesn't matter. Say the sentence. Start by saying the sentence. Not because you then have to immediately feel like you trust. You probably won't. But you start to retrain the pattern and retrain the belief. This is a lot of the basis of mindfulness and brain training. You know, we're wired certain ways, but we can redevelop and change our patterns and our habits, but it takes application. So they are 7 ways to welcome abundance. May have been 9 ways squidged in with a few sidebars, but I had a decent sized list here. So I'm conscious that we wanted to answer maybe a couple of questions that you sent in. So Noah, if you have maybe 2 questions for me, that would be awesome.
Hey Lee, yes, I do have a couple here, so I will. I'll get right into it.
This is Noah, everybody. He's running this from New Jersey and has been fielding your questions and helping you guys get access to the broadcast. So thanks, Noah.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and grateful for everyone that came out. And I thought it was a great teaching, Lee. So nice work. But yeah, I'll jump in and read this question first. It reads, I feel stuck with bouts of having money abundance and then not having it. I'm in a longer period this time with shame attached, as I have so many glorious gifts to share and have this wave of motivation and inspiration and then none at all. A reflector from human design and wonder if the community I live in and the energy around it has a big part to play.
Yeah, you know, one of the wisest things I ever heard is that phrase, the answer is in the question. And I really trust you. The second part of your question, you said, I'm wondering if the community has a part to play. Sure, it definitely will. And the tricky thing about our relationship to relationships is the one person that we can work with is us. Sometimes another person will transform with us. You know, we can have a difficult conversation and the two of us are ready to transform together, and we can. But other times, we realize that we are trying to fit ourselves to other people's expectations or agendas. And when we say to those people, oh, I can't play it this way anymore, they either lose interest in us or we're no longer sticky to their agenda. And that's not a judgment on them. It's just they're playing reality in a certain way, and you have been playing reality their way. And when you choose to not play reality that way anymore, you no longer have glue. They want to stay where they are, and you want to go somewhere else. So I think it would be very good to ask yourself some questions about how the community is influencing this. But there was something that really stuck out in your question to me. You said you know how to manifest abundance and having lots of resources, and you love being able to be generous and give and have a big mission. And then you go into states where you don't have as much and you feel more contracted. This is a thought for you, but what if both of those states are really necessary to you and you just haven't yet figured out how to bring both of them into a life of abundance? I'll explain what I mean. You know, any of you who are on my newsletter, you'll see that I wrote a newsletter to you guys a week ago, and I said, you know, 4 things that I used to think about abundance that I no longer think. And one of the things 20 years ago was that if I could make lots of money, I could just pay for everyone all the time. That was really like, wouldn't it be great to just pay for everyone all the time? And actually, you know, the money that comes through me does go to quite a lot of different people, but I don't pay for everyone all the time because I've learned the shadow side of that. You know, I had bad experiences of overgiving to certain people, and sometimes it went great and sometimes it went really badly. So what I learned was, you know, you can hold abundance and be an ambassador of abundance, but an ambassador has to think it all through. And rather than think, oh, I've got all of this stuff, I can just fling it here, there, and everywhere, you also can get rid of it that way. And sometimes having a lot of abundance and sitting with it can be uncomfortable. You know, it's like, oh, I'm not comfortable sitting with all this in my bank account. I should go shopping. That's why people get rid of money. You know, people win the lottery and then they lose it all really quickly because they don't know how to sit with it, be with it, let it permeate their life. And then they start going, you know what, I'm going to start a foundation rather than giving all my friends money all the time and then watching them come back to me because they didn't know how to galvanize it. I'm seeing that most people don't know how to manage money. So I'm going to start a foundation where I give free money management classes. That's what I'm going to do. And then thousands of people I can give this to. Now, I'm not saying that's better or worse, by the way. I'm just giving you an example. So in your question, there is a part of you that is used to the binge and purge. And what I'm saying is perhaps you need to trust that you could have a lot and not necessarily just have to fling it out to everybody. And part of the reason that you're in this community is it's showing you some of the conditionality of your relationship and how much you give. You know, I'm sure many watching this broadcast know what we're talking about here. It's that realization where you're like, oh my God, I've been in this friendship or this marriage or this family relationship, and I've just realized that because I've stopped giving them as much as I used to, they don't call me anymore, or they don't want to be with me anymore. Oh my God, it was all about me giving more than they gave. And, and that can be horrifying when you see that. But it's also a real wake-up call for us to pay attention. It's like, pay attention, pay attention. See what's in, oh, I don't really want to see that, Lee. That's uncomfortable to see. Pay attention. Because if we see what's uncomfortable outside us, we don't compensate for it through our behavior. If we don't see it, we start compensating. And we compensate and we compensate and we compensate until we've got nothing left. And that can show up in abundance too. So you have to balance the part of you that wants to be big and generous and the part of you that wants to be a little more contracted. So next time you manifest your abundance, and you will again, use it differently, play with it differently, experiment, and think about some of the things I've said. And I have a feeling some things will come to mind, and maybe write a few things down and sit with them in the coming days. Thank you for your question. It was a great one.
Thanks, Lee. The next question reads, hi, Lee. Wondering if you can address fear of abundance making you selfish, greedy, and apathetic to those with less, and viewing poverty as virtuous.
Well, abundance will make you greedy, that's for sure. No, I'm teasing. I think there's two different things you've said there. So number one, you've said abundance making you greedy and apathetic, and people who view poverty as virtuous. Those two things, well, people who view poverty as virtuous, that is a thing. I mean, that does exist. And for those people with that belief, that is their truth. So you have to leave them to it. If especially if they're aggressive about their truth. It's one thing to believe, oh, I'm living a virtuous life because I'm living in poverty. And that, that's very certain monks. And, I've known people who've taken that vow, and it's been very powerful for them. I've also known them come out of it. They used it for a while, and then I've known some who've stayed. But people who want to hit you over the head with that, as if you should be living their way, that's a whole other story. Anybody who wants to tell you you should be living life the way they think you should, they have a God complex. They have a God complex. We're all unique. We're all different. This is one hell of a complicated planet with a whole diverse array of experiences. And we're just tiny ants, in a way, in this one passage of history. So if somebody wants to decide that they're telling you how to live, you probably really want to avoid that person as much as you can, and also look at why you would give your power away to that person. But to go back to what you said about abundance making you greedy and lazy, and the only way you will know the truth to that is if you become really abundant and watch what happens. Sure, you might have a greedy moment. You might have a moment where you feel privileged, but it won't last very long because you are you. So if you're not greedy and lazy and apathetic right now, you're probably not going to become that with abundance. Hey, maybe you will for a week or two, but you'll soon get bored of it because it's not who you are. I tend to find that success, money, and an increase in anything will just increase the best and worst parts of us. And if you're somebody who's mindful and aware and, wants to learn and grow and be a more compassionate human being, the older you get, and learn to be kinder and more present, you'll figure that out. You won't go down that path. And hey, maybe you'll go down that path for a moment, but you'll find your way back. So both of those things to me seem like it's a great question because it brings up that money judgment that we have. I think we are hellishly judgmental about money on the planet. I really do. I think one of the reasons that people are so obsessed with fame and celebrity is money. I think if we all knew that celebrities weren't rich, and many of them aren't, it's one of the things they'll say, they just assumed because I was on TV, I had a lot of money. I think we're obsessed with people who have a lot of resources more than we are obsessed with someone who's in the public eye. And the only reason we're not as obsessed with people who've got loads of money and they aren't famous is because we don't see them, you know, and they have all these resources without the inconvenience of being a target for people. I've seen many people go strange around people with money, and I've even noticed it in myself. You know, I can think of many experiences where I was like, oh, this person's really well. I don't quite know how to be around a person who's really wealthy. Well, they weren't always, you know, and they're a person and they just happen to have a different circumstance. So I think that we have to be careful about our judgment of money being a negative thing, because I've known so many people with large amounts of money and reasonable or small amounts of money who have done wonderful things with money. You know, I've got friends who've never had much money, but they've done amazing things in their community using the resources they've raised or the resources they have. And the money is just a part of what they've done. It's, you know, it's just a piece of the abundance of what they've done. So thank you. Thank you, Noah, for those questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lee.
Great. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. The course that I'm doing is pretty extensive. So it's 7 full modules on 7 different topics. And each of those modules, I've broken it down into short videos, you know, kind of like 7-10-minute videos where you can explore and deep dive through the modules as you go. And you can just pick different videos as you go. But there's about 45 minutes worth of content in each module. And then I've given you 7 daily practice videos, which are short. So they're like 7 to 9 minute videos. Things like, I am ready to be grateful. I am ready to visualize abundance. I am ready to love myself. I am ready to be embodied. Things where I will guide you. And Stephen Washington, my husband, who many of you know, who teaches Qigong and mindfulness, he has done some videos as well to help you access your abundant life force, your abundant chi. Then we have bonus interviews with Mike Dooley, who you might know from Notes from the Universe and many of his best-selling books. Mike is awesome. Wendy Kennedy, who is a fantastic channeler and metaphysics teacher for 20 years. Sara Landon. Wendy Kennedy. She's another course. Sara Landon, who is a brilliant channeler and transformational coach and a business, somebody who's really great with business too. She's had an amazing experience. And last but not least, Nicky Pattinson. Wendy's a future course that's coming down the pike. Nicky Pattinson, who has got a brilliant story around making a lot of money, losing a lot of money, and working with people on money. So there's some bonus interviews in the course. And to kick the whole thing off, you have a full-length audio channel called Ambassadors of Abundance. And it talks about how you are an ambassador of abundance. And I channel my guides it's about 50 minutes long, has beautiful music from Davor Bozic, sound healing pieces. And there is a piece of music inside the course too. So you get all of that, and there's a private Facebook group. There is a community online also where you can post comments underneath the videos. And I'm doing a live Q&A for everyone in the course right at the end. So it starts on Wednesday. Today is Monday. I'm recording this. So it starts on June 5th. And it's an incredible price. It's just $99. I wanted to keep this super affordable. But for those of you watching tonight, it's $79 if you can get in there by the end of Wednesday. So at the end of Wednesday, June 5th, the price will move from $79 to $99. So there's even deeper discount if you want to join and be part of the group now. And we've got a fantastic group already in there. The comments have already started. So can't wait. So for those of you who have joined tonight for the broadcast and you aren't going to join us in the course, thank you for being here. And I hope that it has given you lots of tidbits and pieces. And I wish you lots of love with all of your abundance journey in the coming months. And it means a lot to me that you choose to come and do this and be part of our community online. So thank you. And for those of you who are taking the course, can't wait to rock it to the next level and bring you to an abundance upshift that I know that you are going to love. So I will see you in there. Big love, everyone. Take care.